When it was first announced that Dhanush is reuniting with Anand Rai for a romance, everyone was interested for they remember the magic they created with Raanjhana, a movie that I still believe has aged like milk but is fondly remembered for its iconic album and convincing performances, especially by Dhanush in his Bollywood debut. You have to realize that there was little to no expectations from this movie because the Hindi-speaking states, at least majority of the viewers who saw this in theatres in 2013, were not even privy to Dhanush's work in Tamil cinema where he had already established himself as a leading man. The lack of understanding that this is a capable and established star in his own right was so clear that Dhanush hilariously was also awarded the Best Debut Filmfare Award for Raanjhana. I want to remind you that this is an era where film discourse was rather basic, where the think pieces on films would not really go above and beyond the effectiveness of the film story. The discussions around regressive and problematic elements is a phenomenon in the last 10 years or so. Surprisingly, I remember having a conversation about this film with Anupama Chopra, who spoke about how the storytelling had invested her so much that she in the process had forgotten about the obvious problematic elements of the film that included themes of stalking and self-harm utilized in order to impress a romantic interest, and the same acts being portrayed through a, romantic, non-problematic lens. We see these movies with a sense of nostalgia because romantic films with a sense of pathos sprinkled around its musical albums was one, very rare, and two, an abandon were a word I will consistently use in this video. Barbadi is the only reaction to where one undergoes any form of heartbreak or marginal discomfort. Like the dialogue from Haseen Dilruba states, पागलपन के हद से ना गुजरे तो वो प्यार कैसा, होश में तो रिश्ते निभाए जाते हैं. And I feel like slowly and steadily, I am seeing a slightly concerning trend where romantic films that are destructive in nature are gaining popularity to the point where they are being glamorized. When you see the desperate nature of Bollywood today to stay relevant, you realize that they are struggling with original and new stories. So one of the many strategies for the lack of creativity is to bank on nostalgia and double down on what previously worked. And this is where a project like Tere, Ishk I think stems from. Anand Rai as a director has not had a theatrical hit since 2015. So why not reunite with the same artist that helped him achieve one of his only commercial hits in the form of Dhanush and A.R. Rahman. What I see especially with the teaser is the formula we are seeing being glamorized in films of this nature, where the romance, if it includes elements of deceit and heartbreak, often manifests into characters going on destructive paths, which is either related to alcoholism or acting out against their ex-partners. Dhanush arriving at what seems like Kriti Sanon's wedding festivities while being visibly beaten up, describes having just done the last rites of his father, collecting the Ganga Jal in the process with the sole purpose to pour it on Kriti so that he can deliver the zinger line of Purane Paap To Dhole. The visuals that are dispersed throughout the small teaser checks all the boxes what one would associate with a toxic and destructive relationship that I feel in a more insular society today that is performative on social media, everyone wanting to be the main character in their own life, sadly have started emulating too. The frames that include violence of Dhanush whipping someone, Kriti downing alcohol. In the previous teaser, she was dousing herself with kerosene. Every character is found smoking a cigarette either in anger or in despair, and more destruction and violence follows in what seems to be like a wedding function where everything is burnt to ashes. The last line making me absolutely cringe because it seems straight out of a sad boy Majnu WhatsApp status after a breakup, where he states, शंकर चाहता है कि तेरे घर बेटा हो, तुझे भी पता चले जो इश्क में मर जाते हैं वो भी किसी के बेटे होते हैं. Doubling down on the trope that I believe is becoming a trend, the modern day Majnu. There is an absolute lack of tenderness that one associates with the frames, and what I do feel with the current trend in movies, which you will see in the lineup ahead, is to depict the most dramatic and disturbing elements of a relationship, almost to denote such an intense feeling that if you don't feel this in real life, then whatever you're experiencing is not love. I'm not trying to exaggerate this toxic obsession in movies and the influence on people in real life, but when you see the reactions of the audience when they were watching Saiyaara, how the audience was weeping and howling and shouting at the screen when Aneet Padda pulls out a knife on a Han Pandey. Mind you, a lot of these videos may be planted PR, but you could see the angst in a population that loves hard and loves deep, and in these movies somewhat see themselves assuming the role of the main characters in their own movies, which is their life. Tere Ishk mein seems to want to channelize this destructive path, which many people are trying to create parallels with Saiyaara, but if I were to critically analyze Krish Kapoor as a character, he is probably the biggest green flag despite the generic tropes that romantic movies follow. The man is a talented singer who tends to wani with her condition every step of the way. Yes, he may be obsessed with his singing journey, as Aneet plays merely a cheerleader while being the brains of the lyrics to his songs, but I did not find the character to be toxic in any way, at least towards her. It's just that the movie presented intense young love with such conviction and with such beautiful music that one gets invested in the story. What is, however, consistent with all of these movies of intense love is somewhat of a barbadi associated with the impact of that relationship. How a singer like Krish is willing to drop anything for the sake of love. This ranges from professional sabotage, losing friends, to the extreme, which is death. Also, a consistent feature will be the yin and yang combination, where the man is usually portrayed as being a complete wreck, mostly found as a perpetual drunk, but somewhat of a badass, like Aditya Roy Kapoor in Aashiqui 2 and Harshvardhan Rane in Sanam Teri Kasam. I think with the success of Kabir Singh and the re-release of Sanam Teri Kasam and Laila Majnu and its dream run after that, and just seeing Saiyaara do the unprecedented numbers that it did, the makers are running helter-skelter to somehow channelize even a sliver of that same energy through their stories, to show a violent rage in their hero, to show someone who doesn't take a breakup easily, who like a modern day Devdas douses himself with alcohol and cigarettes, as Arijit Singh or Jubin Nautiyal hum tunes in the background, because uske bina feel kaise aayegi. To create a parallel with the teaser of Tere Ishk mein, I am immediately reminded of the teaser of Harshvardhan Rane's upcoming movie with Sonam Bajwa titled Ek Deewane Ki Deewaniyat. Tere liye mera pyar, tera bhi mohtaj nahi. Ye marte dam tak rahega, sirf aaj nahi is the first line of the teaser. And I understand the depths that the makers of the movies are really trying to showcase with their films, of love so deep that a life devoid of it is meaningless. But every romantic film these days are either associated with self-harm, death, or a terminal illness. And this is something that I believe is getting a little out of hand. For it is generating this perception of what love is, which is trickling even to the civic sense of how movies are being watched in theatres, that I'm slightly getting concerned that it doesn't start to be emulated amongst people. I'm sure it already is. The teaser further has lines of Sonam Bajwa saying, "Mere dil mein tere liye mohabbat nahi sirf nafrat hai. Tujhe tabaa jo kar degi wo is deewani ki deewaniyat hai." It's this desperate attempt to channelize angst and hostility in romantic relationships, almost to generate more anger that makes me slightly uncomfortable. This is followed by visuals of Harsh cutting his hand with a bottle of alcohol and screaming in pain while driving a car, all destructive reactions to having a heart broken. The final line also has connotations to death. Harsh saying, "तेरी दीवानियत में मैं जब मर जाऊंगा तो ऐसे ही रहना." Shouting in the end, "मेरी अदा है वो," almost to denote an obsession, and I understand that it's actually masterful from the makers of the film because they have kept the story at bay and it may turn out to formulate into some twisted thriller. But you get what I mean when the destructive love is almost becoming a trend with Bollywood movies, where the common trope is ya to pyar ya barbadi. What's funny is that for most millennials, this prototype of a person, this tattooed, motorcycle riding, perpetually drunk and mostly unemployed mess, was always portrayed as a wreck, but now I am almost seeing the resurgence of the unemployed bad boy as the most attractive prospect for the leading ladies, versus who were essentially considered to be losers back in the day. What I find consistent with some of the most iconic romantic films from the late 90s and mid 2000s is that no matter how inconsistent or hypocritical some of the characters may be, they were always driven, employed, or if the writing was very lazy, just rich. So I like the fact that Shah Rukh Khan may be going to camp, but he has a mansion and apparently a thriving business in Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. Salman in Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam is doing concerts in Italy. Ajay Devgan as Vanraj is also killing it as a lawyer. Saif Ali Khan is a filthy rich Gujju in Kal Ho Na Ho. He is a successful architect in Love Aajkal. Aditya from Jab We Met is a millionaire businessman. What I mean by all of this is that I get that money is not the only prerogative with love, but at least that was on lock. And what I noticed with romance with some of my favorite characters was that they were always first concerned about becoming something individually first, having self-respect for what they are passionate about so that they can become worthy of a union with their partners. I love the scene in which Preeti Zinta rejects Hrithik Roshan in Laksh, for she is disappointed in the lack of interest he showcased so fast in something he finally had some passion for. This fueled something productive in him. Similarly, when I think about Farhan Akhtar from Dil Dhadakne Do and his relationship with Priyanka Chopra, it stems from acknowledging the dark reality of society and how it judges his status as the secretary's son, wanting to change his fate by becoming something himself so that he can respectfully ask for her hand in marriage and not be embarrassed about it. There are many examples of characters wanting to become worthy first and then seeking out for the love. And it may be an old school thought, but this aspect of storytelling or a character arc just seems to be missing in a world where romance is associated with pyar, hinsa or barbadi. You know, Shah Rukh Khan has played his fair share of absolutely nutty, obsessive lovers in movies like Anjam and Dar, but they were portrayed with a negative lens, portrayed with the conviction that he is the antagonist of the story. Social media and reels may want to present these characters in a badass way, but they were intended and portrayed as deplorable characters. Similarly, whenever Salman Khan promoted a movie like Tere Naam, he consciously kept on reminding the audience during the promotional run that Radhe is an absolute loser who ruins his life for the sake of love, and that the audience should not emulate his choices in any way.
पिक्चर कंप्लीट हो गया, मैं प्रमोशन पे जाऊंगा तो मैं बोलूंगा पिक्चर जरूर देख लेना, लेकिन ये जो कैरेक्टर है साले वो कभी फॉलो नहीं करना. ये लूजर कैरेक्टर है कि एक लड़की के पीछे पागल हो गए और अपनी जिंदगी बर्बाद कर दिए.
I hope more people can have that conviction with some of the violent themes that are portrayed in romantic films these days, where the makers and actors consciously even tell people that the choices made here are destructive and are aspects that they don't stand for. Trust me, it goes a long way versus instances where one starts defending the characters and their choices. I may be coming across as boring by talking about the adverse impact of such movies, but the intention behind this is to hope that romance doesn't become a genre associated only with these violent and volatile themes. I hope there is a range to explore versus heroes and heroines just in their pyar, takrar, hoping for each other's. And that was a video, guys. Write down in the comments below what you think about this trend with romantic films and their violent and toxic tendencies. Please don't forget to follow me on Instagram. The handle is right in front of you. Follow me at JammyPants4. Also, please support us by smashing the like button and subscribing to our channel for weekly content ahead. Thank you for watching.